In episode number 247, we tell you how you can be the very best like no one ever was with June's Pokemon Direct.
And we also have Sony's attempt at creating more family-friendly versions of their films with their Clean Version initiative.
And all the way at the end of the show, we have a spoiler-filled review of Wonder Woman. Have we seen it twice already? Of course we have.
All of this and more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Daniel.
For those of you joining us for the very first time, welcome to the show. The way we formatted is first we're going to start out with some news covering all those things I just mentioned. Typically we follow up with a comic book highlight of the week, but we will not have that this week because we have an action-packed Wonder Woman review all the way at the end where we tell you all about what we thought.
And before we do jump into the news for the week, we want to thank all of the brand new listeners that are coming in. I know the Wonder Woman review headline on YouTube or on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Twitter, wherever you did find the episode. If this is your first episode of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, welcome to the Brokehead family. Thank you so much for giving us a shot. But as I mentioned, you actually have a story from MegaCon that we forgot to tell during our MegaCon coverage.
I do, and it's hilarious. So we were walking out of one of those booths where they have the pictures of the celebrities and they're all signed. And I saw some guy talking to some lady about Pulp Fiction. They had a Pulp Fiction picture up there with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson.
John Travolta?
John Travolta. Listen, I can't talk today. So the guy's sitting there telling her all about it. And they were an older couple. They must have been on a first date or something because he seemed like he was really trying to impress this lady. And he goes, and that's John Travolta, and that's Samuel L. Anderson. And the lady's just like, oh, yeah. And I was like, no, sir.
Samuel L. Anderson. Yeah, that's a good one. You know, I've never heard anyone describe him like that. Samuel L. Anderson. How do you even get Anderson out of it?
He probably just forgot his name and was like, because he had to impress this lady.
That's true. Every time I do over here at the comic book shop, someone, like, it's always one friend who's more knowledgeable than the other, and they're always pointing out things. Like, they point to She-Hulk, and the more common thing I hear is, that's Hulk's girlfriend. It's like, no, that's not.
His cousin, but okay.
Or when their friend are like, well, who is that? And then if they don't know the character, they'll be like, well, that's the main guy from X-Men, Darkseid. And it's Apocalypse. But it's... I never have the heart to correct them or say anything, because otherwise I'm the bad guy either way. So I just kind of get a chuckle out of that.
I love when people try to do that to me at work if we're talking about something comic related, or mainly it's happened with Dragon Ball Z recently, where they're talking about something and they're like, yeah, and it's this thing. I'm like, actually, it's this. And then they're like, oh. Because they're trying to impress me. And I'm like, right. No, calm down. Or Pokemon. I think I've told the story about the Charizard before.
Yep. Flying and fire, right? That's what it is.
Yes, they called him a dragon. No, calm down, guys.
Aside from that, you are about halfway done with the pregnancy.
Yes, I am now halfway done because our child will be 2 weeks late.
Yes, that's right.
Already, I feel the stubbornness within him. So, yes, 2 weeks late. It's going pretty well, I guess, all things considered. From other women I've talked to, they said I'm carrying a child very well and ask me when I'm having the second one. And I'm like, I will adopt dogs, but thank you.
It wasn't until yesterday that I learned, or at least I was reminded by my mom, that I never crawled. I was a baby that just hung on to things and walked like that. There was no crawling. And I think my dad said that with my sister, they tried to have her crawl and she would crawl backwards and never forward. Other than that, all three of us would use tables and objects and just get straight to the fucking training of walking. That is better than crawling. I know they say babies are supposed to be crawling first, but I mean, if you could just jump straight into walking with the help of tables and shit, why not?
Because you were a stubborn baby, that's why. And our child will be just as stubborn.
And I do remember when my brother, for the first time, like, it took his first couple of steps was when he was going from one object to another, one table to another table, and those like 2-3 steps to get to the other one. I mean, that counts. That is essentially training yourself to walk without help of parents holding you up. It's like, no, I need to get to that table, and I don't crawl. So I better walk my ass over there.
I am scared for the future.
We need little tables, Kelly. Something for Leo to hang on to.
Corners for him to bust his head on, yes.
That never happened to me. That never happened to my siblings.
How
if it
do you
happens,
know?
it's your side of the family.
Okay, thanks. All the bad things are my side of the family. All the good things are your side. I see how it is. I get it.
So aside from that, let's go ahead and jump into our news this week.
So as we mentioned in the very beginning, we do have some news from June's Pokemon Direct. But first off, just some Nintendo news. Nintendo has recently revealed details on its online paid service for the Nintendo Switch.
So it turns out, Kelly, that it's even cheaper than what they initially said and what we initially thought. And we now know that it is going to be, what is it normally for PS3 and Xbox? Do you remember?
Like $100 a year.
It's not $100.
$50 a year.
That's close. You've never paid for one of these things, have
No.
you?
We scammed Target for one of these. That's all I remember. We got a year for $14. That's all I remember.
So we didn't really scam them. On the ad itself, like 7 years ago, there was a $14.99. It was supposed to be the 3-month pass, and it was supposed to be a sale, but they had a picture of the 3-month pass and the 1-year pass. So it's like, yep, the ad says it, and I think I had bought 5, and I would have bought more, but I only had like $200 to my name at the time. But I knew it'd be worth it. Like, it is just now expiring this November, and these are still those Target cards.
Wow.
Are still those. Like, people are like, you should sell them on eBay and make, like, a huge profit. I'm like, but I'm always going to need them, so...
I'll still use it.
I'll just input all of them into the PS3. And that's what I ended up doing. And it said, like, you're good to 2017. Just in case in the future they decided to bring up the price of that yearly amount, I decided, like, I better get these years in now and not have these expire or anything like that. So, yeah, Nintendo is going to be even less than half of what PS3 and Xbox 360 normally charge, $50 to $60. Right. It is $20 a year for the Nintendo Switch, or $8 for 3 months, or $4 per month.
That's pretty amazing. That's, I think, definitely the right price point that they need, and something that even parents would get behind and be like, all right, I can afford $20 a year for you to have this little Timmy. Here you go.
Especially since Nintendo has yet to go into the paid online market. They need to not even try to get it anywhere near what Sony and Microsoft are charging for their service.
This does include a lot of things, too. You're going to get voice chat and online lobbies that will be hosted through an app that players can access through their personal smartphones.
And while Nintendo currently has no plans to revive the Virtual Console on the Nintendo Switch, subscribers will get access to classic games like Super Mario Bros. 3, Balloon Fight, and Dr. Mario.
For $20 a year, I think that's worth it.
Do you remember what the Virtual Console was and how it worked on the Wii originally?
Yes, you used to download your games and then you could play them there on the Wii, because I played Pokemon Snap on the Virtual Console.
And you could not move them over to the Wii U unless you did like the transfer tool, but they didn't have like in the service itself, you couldn't just re-download the games based on your account, which was one of the bigger issues with the Virtual Console. And now with this service being like, you can play these classic games only if you have access to our online service, if you paid for it, people do speculate that there will no longer be a Virtual Console, but instead this will be used as further incentive to get the online platform. Yeah,
I definitely don't see why not, because how much did we pay for Pokemon Snap? It was still $10, $15.
About $15,
so $20 a year, I get that and a shit ton of other games.
Do you think that they maybe made more money with reselling Mario to the same consumers, reselling the original Zelda to the same consumers, reselling Star Fox 64 to me, or Pokemon Snap to you, rather than trying to get people on a subscription service?
Not necessarily, because you're going to get more people on a subscription service because it provides more things. So you have the people like us who probably say, yes, I want to replay those games. But then you have the people who are just getting it for the online services where you can get into lobbies and talk to your friends through there and have no interest in the game. So beforehand, that market wasn't even paying for this service. And beyond that, you have a recurring purchase. So I have only bought Pokemon Snap.
Right.
I think I bought Pokemon Yellow too. But that's over how many years? Have I only spent maybe $20 between those two things? Now you get my $20 every single year.
I think it's going to be very important for them to make sure that their online service is butter smooth, especially if you have a game like Mario Kart, or if you have Super Smash Brothers that they're eventually going to release on the Switch. If people are going to pay for this online service, it needs to be a milestone above what they've previously done with the Wii and the Wii U. And now the Switch needs to be the best yet online service for the console. If they're paying money, if they want people to go on this service just to play the virtual console games, even though they know that they probably won't get people playing their online games just for Splatoon 2 or just for Super Smash Brothers. But instead, if they have those classic games on there, it's going to be worth it more for the consumers. I'm unhappy personally because Virtual Console is a great service. It was awesome for a lot of players to handpick all the games that they wanted. But yes, from a business standpoint, this is the smarter decision. And then slowly over time, you put on there like, hey, we've just added the 3, Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, Silver, and Gold to the Virtual Console, or in this case, to the online service, if you sign up today for as little as $4 a month, for as much as $20 a year. Now you have access to all these games and our online gaming. It is pretty smart. Let's see how it works out for them. The only thing I'm concerned with is I don't know if people are going to hang on to that service for the long term, or if this is going to be something that they're going to always need to have active to play these older games, kind of like the PlayStation does with PlayStation Plus.
We'll definitely find out soon, but one move that they are making in the right direction, it brought warmth to my heart, is something new, but old, that's hitting the Nintendo eShop.
A blast from the past, and this is through Pokemon, as we mentioned earlier. Pokemon Gold and Silver will be released on the 3DS's eShop on September 22nd.
My cries for Pokemon Snap still have not been answered, but they gave me something else that's great instead.
Knowing that Heart Gold and Soul Silver are our favorite Pokemon games, are the classics going to hold up the same? You can't have the Pokemon follow you around. It's going to have those older graphics, but it's still a better version than Blue and Red, which you were playing not too long ago.
I was playing Yellow version. Get it right, sir. Yellow.
Well, Gold and Silver are better than Yellow. It's still an improvement over Yellow.
Let's rethink some things, okay? Yellow's pretty awesome, but Heart Gold, Soul Silver, they are, like we said, our favorite Pokemon games, but I also think that they had a great game to build off of, and that's why they're some of our favorites. So you're still going to have all those things that you loved about. It's the only one where you can go to like two different worlds and refight all the old people. How cool is that? They
haven't done it since.
They haven't, and they need to because it's so good. I almost hoped, because we talked about Kanto so much in Sun and Moon, I almost hoped we could go back, but alas.
You ran into Red and Blue.
Yeah, I did.
You got further in that game than I did.
I'm so far in that game. I got to like the battle tree, and now I can choose to fight Red or Blue, and I can't decide, so I closed it. It probably died.
And you didn't save. I know you didn't save.
I saved like 2 battles ago.
Who are you going to pick, though? Are you going to fight Red or are you going to fight Blue?
I don't know. See, part of me wants to fight Red because in Silver you get to fight Red and it's like that epic battle, right? Mm-hmm. But then part of me wants to fight Blue to be like, fuck you one more time.
Knock him down from the pedestal of greatest trainer of all time for like the 4th or 5th time.
Whatever. It's cool.
This was actually a part of a huge Pokemon Direct that Nintendo and the Pokemon Company did. And they also announced the new Switch game. Not the Switch game that people wanted or that the one that they expected. But instead, we are getting Pokken Tournament DX, which will be coming to the Nintendo Switch on September 22nd as well, with all of the DLC characters included, which are the Decidueye, Darkrai, Scizor, Empoleon, and Krogunk. Motherfucking Krogunk sticking his fist right up your asshole, just like in the anime. He's an instant win character. If you throw him in Injustice, I think any character except for Batman would lose against Krogunk. Everyone's just paralyzed by that attack.
Is that what happens? There's not one DC character who'd be like, oh.
Well, they'd still be paralyzed by it, just in a good way.
Oh, okay.
And when they did Pokken Tournament, I don't know if when we did that episode like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I don't think either of us went, they should throw Krogunk in that game. And they fucking did it for us.
I hope that's one of his moves. Like, that's his final attack. It's like, right up there.
Remember what you like.
Poor Brock.
So this is going to be I guess it's going to be a seller for a lot of the Pokemon fans because now they can get it on the latest system if they did enjoy Pokken Tournament, and they have all of the DLC characters. I'm assuming more on the way. If they were smart, they would do another DLC pack for the Nintendo Switch. Do you care at all about Pokken Tournament? Neither do I. I never actually played it, but I know people played it for about a week. Everyone that owned it played it for just a week. And I don't know how well this is going to sell, but hey, another Pokemon thing, and this is actually something on the Switch.
Something else, and this one I do think a lot of people will buy. I'm on the fence if I would like it for myself, but the Pokemon Company has announced releasing for the 3DS Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. Those will be their next titles.
Do you remember what people said was going to be the latest Pokemon title for this?
No.
There was a leak, supposedly, that there was going to be a Nintendo
Eclipse?
Switch. It wasn't being called Eclipse, but instead it was Pokemon Stars. And this was supposed to be the Nintendo Switch version, the port of Sun and Moon onto that console. So a lot of clues came out of this. I know there was some kind of leak over that patent of Pokemon Stars, but in the past they've done that with other games, and people thought, oh, Pokemon Z, because they did patent that, and then nothing ever came out of it. A lot of that is Pokemon trying to, one...
trick us all.
Well, yeah, one of the things is to throw out a red herring so that people don't know immediately what they're going to release. But also, I'm assuming it's a pirating thing so that someone doesn't release a Z version out there and they don't have, like, that trademark to it. But when they did Pokemon Stars, everyone said, okay, let's look at the files for Pokemon Sun and Moon. If you look at the textures, they're in much higher resolution than what the 3DS can normally handle. So it actually downgrades onto the handheld versions for the 3DS, and you don't actually see all of the details. In some of the Pokemon, you can actually see some of the fur textures, like on Pikachu, but you don't even notice it on the 3DS. So people speculated, well, this is probably the same version that'll be on consoles, but when you get it on the Switch, you will be able to see all of the textures. It'll run a lot smoother, because in that game, and they haven't come out with an update to fix that yet, but they're in certain moves, especially when there's like a sandstorm going or if there's rain happening during the battle, the game will slow down and the menu will take longer. You've ran into that, right? And that's another clue that people said there is a higher version to it, and the 3DS is just downgrading it so that it can run it. But instead, we did not get Pokemon Stars, we did not get Pokemon Eclipse, and a shit ton of players online were very, very upset. Someone on Twitter and the Lazy Gaming guys retweeted it. They put up a thing that said players feel like, and it said Pokemon Salt, Ultra Salt. And just angry gamers. And I'm thinking this whole time, is this your very first Pokemon game ever? They do this shit all the time where they split it into two. Just because it didn't happen in the last generation or two doesn't mean that they're not going to do it for Sun and Moon or ever again. The last time we got this was with Black and White, and then people expected, okay, maybe we're going to get a Pokemon Gray. And they said, nope, X and Y. So people said there's going to be a Pokemon Z or an XY2. And they said, nope, Sun and Moon. And now they're like, oh, so they're just going to give us new generations from now on. And they said, nope, fuck you bitches, here's Ultra Sun and Moon. So it's like, never get comfortable with Pokemon. They will pull this shit out when you least expect it, just as a big middle finger to you.
You know, and we're all going to buy it, so good on them.
I'll watch you play it. I'm not yet convinced that I need to buy this game, but if they throw in like the original starters, yes, I'm in. I need to see what the alternate story is. What are the differences, Kelly?
So the new titles will feature an alternate storyline, the return of Mega Pokemon, and alternates to Solgaleo and Lunala.
That seems to be enough for you. I think you're sold on this.
Well, here's my only problem. This game releases November 17th, 2017.
True.
2 weeks after I expect our child to be born.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have time for that.
I will have neither time nor money to play this game.
I know, I definitely won't have time with the baby, with the podcast if I'm trying to get guests on while you're recovering. It's going to be a tough time. November, December, January, the first 6 months starting in November, which is right after during Justice League also. That Justice League live action film, I fucking can't wait. But all of that is just going to be such a busy fucking winter. And on top of that, I work in retail. So I'm mostly going to have Black Friday. You're going to have the holiday rush when you eventually go back to work.
Nah, man. I timed this right. I miss all that shit.
You know what? I might miss some of that pre-Black Friday stuff.
You might. I get to miss Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. You don't remember when we started this whole thing? I said, here's your window. And if not, we're waiting until next year. I was not working through that stuff after birth.
This is perfect for the holiday season, of course. November 17th, right before Christmas.
Now, if they announced you could go back to Kanto, would you buy it?
It wouldn't even have to be Kanto. If they tell me that I can go back to a previous region with another set of gyms, I don't care what region it is, yeah, I would probably buy it then.
All right, then. There we go. Figured it out.
As I said earlier, not everyone is happy with the news of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And it's the first one in several weeks, but we do have this episode's Nerd Rage Reaction!
For those of you who don't know what a Nerd Rage Reaction is someone who is out in the internet and just doesn't like life. They don't enjoy things, and they let us know about it on the internet. So we're not going to tell you who sent it or who said it. You're welcome to go out and find them if you really want to, but we found the comment humorous.
So this week's Nerd Rage Reaction reads, quote, "Seems like an add-on DLC to Sun Moon, only greedily churned to a full-on separate product. Sun and Moon players should be cheesed by this announcement." End quote.
You know what was added on DLC? Crystal.
That's true. Crystal was definitely DLC.
Emerald.
Yep. Emerald. Yep.
Every other middle Pokemon game that's ever got.
You forgot Yellow, the very first one.
No, that was a great one. That was perfect. Black and White 2.
Yep.
Weren't those just
they were
DLC?
Just split into 2.
All right. Well,
even better.
And people purchased them, so there we go.
It's their first, they should be cheesed by it doesn't matter. It's gonna sell. Shut up. It's going to sell.
They're gonna make great money right before the holidays.
It should never be add-on DLC. If they have another 2 hours of content even, make that a whole new game. Add a fourth starter if you want, or add, as they said, an alternate story where you start on a different island. Maybe you take on the gyms backwards.
Like you said, there could be a thing where you get all the original starters or 3 starters from a different game.
Any generation.
And it doesn't matter. Okay, going back to Yellow. That's what Yellow did. You got all the starters, you got your Pikachu, you fought Team Rocket. Those were such minor differences, and it was a whole new game, and I eat it up. I'm like, nom, 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 Pokemon Yellow.
So again, it must be their very first Pokemon experience.
It must.
They got
I don't even think they play Pokemon.
Probably not.
They just saw the names and assumed it was the same thing.
Yeah, exactly right. Because all the Pokemon players are going to buy it. I know kids are going to really like the new legendaries. They love all of the legendaries. And when there are alternates to them, they eat it right up. Even if they made them shiny versions, that would have been enough.
Oh, man.
Would have been enough for this. But instead, they have these armored things, and I'm sure that's going to have to do with the story. You can let me know what it's like, but until they announce a new region and a new 8 set of gyms. So 16 total, whatever you want to call them. They're not gyms in this game, but 8 totems and 8 gyms. Give me that, and you'll have my $40.
The only way, and I might still buy this game, let's be honest, but I don't think I'll remember it. I'm not going to remember 6 months out of this year. So I'll try. If I remember, I'll let you know about it.
So that does wrap it up for the Pokemon Direct and the video game news. Here on forward, we've got comic book and superhero news from the television and movie side as well.
Beginning with one of our favorite comic writers. In an interview with Newsarama, Harley Quinn writers Paul Dini and Jimmy Palmiotti revealed that there are future plans to continue their collaboration past the initial art.
Fuck yes.
Yes.
You continue this shit. You renew Paul Dini's contract.
Forever.
You keep him on here. Don't let him get busy with something else. This was the mistake with Arkham Knight. He told you repeatedly, and not DC, the publishing company, but he told Rocksteady, he told Warner Brothers Games, if you guys want me to write the third Arkham game, let me know now, because I'm about to get into some contracted work with Disney and with Marvel, and that's when he was doing the Agents of Smash stuff. And they said, no, we'll contact you, and sure enough, 6 months later, they contacted him, and he's like, I'm busy, you fucking assholes. I told you guys, I can't be writing the third game. And they said, all right, we'll find someone else. And we had the weakest story of the 3 games, which was Arkham Knight. Still an enjoyable experience, probably the weakest of the 3 games, but the story could have been so much better. And because of that, ever since then, he has eventually gone back to comics. And more importantly, he's gone to DC Comics onto Harley Quinn, along with Jimmy Palmiotti. So it's more or less probably to keep the continuity about the same with what they're writing in the Harley Quinn book. But it's a contract thing. I'm sure they have him for 6 or 12 issues, write this mini story. And now that he's enjoying it so much and he and Jimmy are working well together and the book is still selling, you renew that fucking contract. And even if it's just a backup story, you keep him on there. And if he wants to write Detective Comics, if he wants to write something else, you let Paul Dini write whatever the fuck he wants.
And we don't know quite yet what that's going to be, but we did have Newsarama who asked, are the backups going to continue for a while?
And Paul Dini said, quote, well, for the immediate future. And then we're going to think about the format and if we want to continue in that format or taking it in a different direction. We love that version of the character and love telling stories about her in that universe. So right now, we're just going to see to what degree we're going to tell those stories, end quote.
And the universe and the version of the character they're talking about is Batman the Animated Series.
Pretty much.
Which, essentially, and that's what we've had in our backup story, is Harley Quinn and the Joker running around, causing trouble.
I think what they should do is once they finish the backup arc, get rid of that, bring the pages back down to the regular or extend the pages to fill that gap. And, the book is still $2.99, but make it a solo miniseries or make a solo ongoing for Harley Quinn where it is co-written with Paul Dini and Jimmy. And you just have 2 Harley Quinn books on the stands, 3 a month because Harley comes out twice a month, and just watch all the dollar signs.
Just make all that money.
You're going to watch the Paul Dini, maybe not, but you're going to see Paul Dini's work better appreciated than the regular ongoing Harley Quinn. And maybe that could be a bad thing for the regular book, but I know regular fans of Harley are going to pick up the main series, and the Paul Dini one will be kind of an offshoot or a side story. But fans like us who grew up on the animated series and who do love Harley Quinn would love to see one of the co-creators on his own book, even if it's, with another writer. And yes, you will sell the shit out of that to us.
If he does get his own book, Harley's going to be in her underwear with Ivy sometime in this book.
Some of that was also Bruce Timm.
But I mean Dini.
Like Jimmy puts her in that situation pretty often as well, so this is a pretty good substitute for Bruce Timm not being around.
Either way, we're super excited. Whatever Paul Dini signs on for, whether it's an ongoing, whether it's continuing with a little back of the book series, we cannot wait.
Here's a bad idea, Kelly.
Bad idea.
So CW's Deathstroke, as played by Manu Bennett, recently made a return to Arrow. Well, he is now campaigning for a solo Deathstroke television show.
Oh.
And get this, Kelly, ready? So Deathstroke's co-creator, Marv Wolfman, tweeted his support. And he tweeted with, quote, "I love Deathstroke and I was overjoyed to see your return and would love to see you do more," end quote. That is his support. I would like to see more of my character out there because I'm getting paid every time they use him. So yes, just keep him going.
So excited for this. Just not at all. This would be horrible. Don't do it.
Some characters need to stay as supporting characters.
Yes.
Not every character needs his own television show. Deathstroke is not a character that could have his own television show, that could support his own fan base, that will bring in ratings. It's not going to hit the numbers that Arrow or The Flash or Supergirl do. No. It's going to last one season, maybe half a season, depending on the order, and then it's going to go away. It's the same reason why I didn't think they should do a Venom solo movie. It's the reason why we don't do any of the villains really could hold as their own. I mean, imagine giving Penguin his own television show. It just wouldn't hold. He's better as a regular character on the show. Deathstroke, the reason people like him is because he does show up every now and again in the comics or in the television show or in the movies. He's going to be one of the villains for Batman. If you try to give him his own solo movie, it won't do as well as if he were to appear, say, as a member of the Suicide Squad in Suicide Squad 2.
Just look at Jack Sparrow and what happened with him.
There you go.
Better as a side backup character where we only know so much about him, and we don't need to hear his inner thoughts and see a whole movie.
To be fair, we haven't watched most of Arrow, and I do want to hear from the Brocats that do watch Arrow every single week. Do you actually think that Deathstroke could hold this version of Deathstroke? Let's leave it at this. Do you think Manu Bennett's Deathstroke would hold his own television show past a season? Would he bring in ratings? Would people see Deathstroke on their TV guide and say, yes, I want to watch that?
You can let us know what you think on Twitter at ReasonsI'mBroke or at PalpaKelly.
There's been some controversy over the new Bill Finger documentary, well received by viewers, but the premiere on Hulu caused some members of the industry to criticize one of the main character essentially to the documentary, which is Mark Nobleman, for making himself a focus of the story.
We have a quote here from at Gabriel Hardman, who's on Twitter and the writer for Invisible Republic, who says, quote, "So this filmmaker set out to tell the real story of Bill Finger's contribution to Batman by making himself the most important character," end quote.
While it was pointed out that Nobleman wasn't the creator of the documentary, the framing of it was still an issue for some. Nobleman actually uncovers the evidence. He searches for it himself. He does narration where he says, and then I uncovered this part, and I couldn't stop searching, so I had to find one more clue. And that's when I was able to contact the last remaining member of the Finger family. And I did watch the documentary. You haven't seen it yet, right?
No.
It is all about a lot of shots of him behind the computer, doing research, going out to interview people, going to the library, going through the catalogs.
A History Channel documentary where we're looking for aliens?
It makes it seem like it is almost a historical thing. Most of the time, documentaries will have the person asking the questions, and he does do interviews, which is why I was confused, and probably this guy was confused too. They'll have them off camera, and they won't show them. Unless you're Michael Moore, you're not going to be the main character of this documentary, especially when Bill Finger was the main guy. As someone who viewed it, there was a little bit weird where I'm like, okay, yeah, you're making yourself as the big thing, but it wasn't enough to dissuade me from watching the documentary or from enjoying it more. Instead, it was still about Bill Finger. At the end of the day, it was about the evidence. It was about his family. It was about the creation of Batman. I at least did not take as much of a problem with what ended up coming out, but a lot of people are criticizing Mark Nobleman for being so much as the center of this story as opposed to just Bill Finger and keeping it as a strict documentary.
As well, they probably should. I am grateful that it's gotten to the point where people recognize Bill Finger for his contribution, but if you're going to do a documentary, make it all about him.
Do you think Mark Nobleman is to blame for this, or you think the actual people who made the documentary, the two filmmakers, probably had the idea of we should tell it as your story and then go into Bill Finger and then go back?
That's probably what the filmmakers did, but at the same time, Nobleman should have been, no guys, we need to make it all about him. And I don't know, maybe he tried. I don't know all the story, but somebody's in the wrong here.
All I can say is, as I said again, it's still a really good documentary. It did not distract me enough to where I didn't enjoy it, and everyone learned so much from this if you weren't following the Bill Finger story already.
So moving on into some movie news, we mentioned at the beginning, Sony Pictures is launching a, quote, clean version program for 24 of its films to make them more accessible to a wider audience.
These edited for TV versions will be available on iTunes, Vudu, and Fandango now as an option with the uncut films.
If successful, the line will expand.
So before we go into what films they are, what do you think about this as an option? There are a lot of parents that in the comment section were saying, normally I have to fast forward during the love scenes or during the more violent portions, but this will make it easier for me and my family to watch the superhero movies without worrying about what may show up. So now you buy Amazing Spider-Man on iTunes, and when you play it, it'll ask you, do you want the original theatrical cut or do you want the clean version from Sony?
I think it's probably a good idea. Yes, there's parents watch movies in front of their kids a lot. I remember my parents used to have to be very selective of what they played when I was home or not. Mm-hmm. And again, I like to say this now before I make comments about what I would do. I'm not a parent of a child who can understand any of that yet. Mm-hmm. So yes, if they're going to include it with the movie, if it's not something that I have to purchase extra, sure, go ahead. Do I like seeing all those racy scenes? Yes. So it is not for me, but I'm not the market yet.
There is something to be said about cutting movies apart from what the directors would have wanted mm-hmm. and then selling them later on. I think if I were a filmmaker, I would have an issue with it, but the fact that it is an option, at the very least, it gives you that chance of maybe more people are going to watch that movie than initially because of the content. I do like that it's not a separate purchase.
Correct.
That it is included already with the digital versions. I think that's really cool, and eventually they'll probably put it on the Blu-rays as well and on the DVDs. It's an option. It's a choice. More choices are great. For the integrity of the movie, I think you should watch it mm-hmm. in its full form, uncut. And it also depends on how many cuts they're actually going to be doing. If they're just beeping over the language or if they're fast forwarding or cutting the love scenes down a little bit. I don't think it's that big a deal, but I know me growing up, I didn't have those uncut versions. On TV, they would play them. But whenever I did own those movies, when I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a kid, the live action, I saw Raphael screaming, "Damn!" on top of the rooftops. And it's just, I think it's a part of growing up is to little by little be exposed to some of the things that you're not going to see in real life. You're not going to see someone yelling on the rooftop, damn, and maybe you'll see a sex scene for the first time in a movie. You probably will. That's probably the first time, hopefully, that younger audiences see that. So in this case, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to show little Leo uncut versions or if I'm going to wait until they're old enough and then show them the full movie. I think that's probably what I'm going to do.
And I think that's probably what I would suggest that we do as well. The thing you have to look at on the flip side, too, is we're very fortunate that we have a strong support team around us where Leo can go and play for 3 hours while we watch a movie that we may not want him to see. And not everybody has that.
The other problem, too, is what dictates which cuts they're going to make. Because even the uncut version, the cut version, the censored clean version, may not be clean enough for some parents. Maybe they'll have to them, like, the violent scenes are going to be a little much for kids. And to the studio, they're like, oh, we didn't see that as a bad thing. So I think there's still going to be issues with this. But I don't know. I think maybe most parents that do want this clean version are going to be, for the most part, okay with having this option and using it.
So the 24 movies that will be edited in this first round are 50 First Dates, Battle of the Year, Big Daddy, Captain Phillips, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Easy A, Elysium, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, Goosebumps, Grown Ups, Grown Ups 2, Hancock, Inferno, Moneyball, Pixels, Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, and White House Down.
So with that full list, that does wrap it up for our news this week. Let's head on over to our Patreon shoutouts and then our Wonder Woman spoiler review.
So we do have 2 shoutouts this week. They go out to Bobby and Neil.
Bobby on Twitter is @CubanSlim, who has been sharing with me the Injustice 2 alternate costumes, which look amazing. He is loving Injustice 2. He is sending me, like, the Captain Cold alternate is Mr. Freeze. So you can play as Mr. Freeze, and it's got the different voices. The alternate to Green Lantern, to Hal Jordan, just like in the first one, is Jon Stewart. Then you've got the alternate to Flash and his Reverse Flash. Alternate to Cheetah is Vixen. So they've got, like, extra characters that essentially have the same movesets. They just reskin the moves, they reskin some of the weapons, and it is basically the same character, but it is still awesome that you can play. Let's say you're good with Captain Cold, but you're like, you know what, I like Mr. Freeze more, though. So now I can play as Mr. Freeze with Captain Cold's movesets and just have a fucking blast. They just put on Red Sun Superman.
Was that a pun?
No, I didn't mean it to be.
Blast? like an ice blast?
Superman, they threw in Red Sun Superman, although his costume is all red, which doesn't match the comics. In the comics, it's gray, and then he's got the red cape and then the red symbol. But I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, it's fine. It's got the symbol on the chest. It's Red Sun Superman. It's fine. Not a big deal. So he's been loving Injustice 2. And then Neil, you can follow him at nmats68. He posted up a cat fidget spinner video. So he had the little fidget spinner. He spun it, and the cat is just staring at it. And his Instagram video said, "Fun for days," and it's just the cat, like, swatting at the fidget spinner.
Boy, I still don't understand those fidget spinners.
I don't get them either, but if that's what's going to keep a cat occupied, then here's 7 of them.
Can we put them all around our property so they stay away?
Oh my God, yes. Or if you have one in the house, it'll keep them from knocking those cups over.
There you go.
Because those videos are way too common on YouTube. Cat knocks over glass, and they're always assholes about it. They're always dicks.
You're always like, don't do it. Don't do it. And they just look at you and go, pow.
Like, do something.
Can I use it to throw out the cats that are fighting in the middle of the night? Because I'm done with them.
Oh my God, yes. just fidget spinners in there. Just a handful of them. Maybe that'll keep them busy.
Stop fighting. Here's some fidget spinners.
Stop scaring the dog. Poor Ace. He goes out there and barks, and they don't do anything. They just keep fighting.
They go, meow. At 4 a.m. Meow. I've been asleep for 2 hours, cat. Just stop.
Thank you so much again to Bobby and Neil and to the rest of our Patreon backers. If you also want your shout out every single month, for as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to the podcast and, of course, the shout out. There are different tiers. You can get more if you donate more each month. But if you do want to join the Patreon Brokehead family, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke.
And of course, guys, our podcast will always be free. The best thing you can do for us is leave us a review on iTunes, tell your friends about us, reach out to us on Twitter. Especially if you're a new broquette, you're turning in for the first time, we would love to hear from you.
Definitely would love some feedback as well, not just to the newer listeners, but to the longtime broquettes. If there's something you want to hear more of or less of, or you want us to adjust our reviews a little bit, definitely let us know on Twitter at Reasons I'm Broke, at Kelli, or Facebook.com/TheReasonsI'mBroke. I also want to give another thanks to DecalAvenue.com for the help at the $5 decal reward tier.
And that will do it for our traditional show this week. Typically, we have a comic book highlight. Like we said, we don't have one this week, but we have a whole lot of Wonder Woman just about to come your way.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a lighter week for our comics. The last 2 weeks actually have been pretty light. There is supposed to be a big event book in the Batman story that we are going to discuss next week. So we will have that in episode 248?
I don't know, a whole bunch. We've been doing this a long time.
248. But aside from that, moving forward, it is our Wonder Woman spoiler review. We left it at the very end in case you haven't seen Wonder Woman yet and you don't want it spoiled. Thank you so much for tuning in then, if you are tuning out. Thank you for the support. Thank you for listening, for downloading, for whatever level you help us out at. Just thank you so much for listening to the podcast this week.
Diana, Princess of the Myth.
Prince, Diana Prince.
Before we dive into our review, though, we do have some fun facts about the movie. Not really fun facts, statistics.
So Wonder Woman was directed by Patty Jenkins, who did Monster many years ago, Academy Award winning for Charlize Theron. It does star Gal Gadot from Batman v Superman, Chris Pine from the current Star Trek movies, and Robin Wright from House of Cards.
Wonder Woman is the third movie in 2017 to pass $100 million domestic opening weekend. This is along with Beauty and the Beast and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Wonder Woman currently has made $228.3 million worldwide, which would make Patty Jenkins the current record holder for best domestic opening ever for a female director.
This is right on track with where they need to be. Production and marketing budget has an estimation of between $300 million and $460 million. I definitely think we're going to surpass that.
Yeah, both of those combined, $300 to $460 million. By the time it opens in the rest of the world, throughout the rest of the countries, and then the Blu-ray sales, yes, they will more than make up their money for Wonder Woman. So there's going to be a Wonder Woman 2. They haven't officially said it yet, but according to THR, which is the Hollywood Reporter, director Patty Jenkins wants to set Wonder Woman 2 in the present time. Gal Gadot has a contract option for a sequel, but renegotiations would have to take place for Jenkins to return.
I think we're definitely going to see that happen, though. This is the first DC EU movie that was well received both commercially and critically.
However we may feel about reviewers or Rotten Tomato scores, this does have a positive overall rating for reviews, and it also has made a shit ton of money in the box office, whereas the last 3 DC EU movies have just made a bottom line shit ton of money, and that's the important part.
Right.
But now you have something different in which a majority of people seem to like it, and it's making a lot of money.
And of course, we can't get through any DC commentary without throwing a little jab at Marvel. Here's a little elbow. By the time Marvel's first female solo MCU superhero film releases in 2019, 5 other male-led superhero Marvel movies will have released. So now nobody can say, well, Marvel did it first. Oh, no, they didn't.
DC did something way more important first.
Yes.
Warner Brothers did something way more important first. And yes, it is the first female-led superhero movie that did really well in the box office and also did really well commercially. So it is such an important success story for Warner Brothers, for all the crew involved, for everyone that couldn't make the movie. You know, they look at this and say, shit, although maybe it wouldn't have done as well if some of the other previous directors had actually not passed on the project or left due to creative differences. So this is all good stuff for Gal Gadot, for Zack Snyder, for Patty Jenkins, for the screenwriters, for Jeff Johns, and for the future of the DCEU.
So the way we're going to format our review is we're going to start off with the story. We're going to talk about the acting and directing and special effects. And then at the very end, we'll give it a rating 1 through 5.
Wonder Woman tiaras?
Sure, Wonder Woman tiaras.
Are they still called tiaras?
They
never called it tiara.
They
but
didn't.
She's a princess. But Robin Wright wasn't a princess, and she had that tiara.
Well, we could do Hephaestus lassos. Was her Hephaestus? We could do golden lassos.
Out of 5 lassos of truth. Okay. How about that?
Because we're speaking the truth.
That's right.
There you go.
So let's talk about the story first. Typically what we do is we summarize the plot, and then as we're summarizing, we give our thoughts on it. And that's kind of how we review the first portion of it. So the movie does open with a present day Wonder Woman and how she is talking about the world and how there is darkness within it, but then how there is also good within it as well. Well, you have this shot of the Wayne Enterprises truck pulling into where Wonder Woman is walking into this building. And out of it come a couple of guys with a suitcase. When she opens it, there's a note from Bruce Wayne that says, hopefully one day you can tell me the real story. And it is that image that we saw in Batman v Superman, where she is next to Chris Pine and the Blackhawks. I'm going to call them the Blackhawks. They are the fucking Blackhawks. And it's this World War I image. And that is what initially gave away the main thing to Bruce Wayne, that she was a metahuman. This is an old picture, yet she still looks the same. He did the face tracking thing, and yes, it is her, as we saw in Batman v Superman. So they took something from that movie, and they expanded it into this whole story, into this movie, where we then flash back to when Diana is a little girl.
And we see her as a little girl running around Themyscira, Island of Paradise, with all these awesome Amazonians around her, and she's the only child on the island. And of course, she's growing up, wanting to learn how to fight, and her mom's saying, nope, you can't fight, can't do it, you gotta stay my little girl forever, I need to keep you safe. And obviously she wins out at the end, and we get this amazing story of her growing up and her learning how to fight, and her aunt, played by Robin Wright, taking the time out to really teach her to be the strongest Amazonian that they've ever seen.
They have her believe that the God Killer is this sword that she is shown, but you know, later on we find something else out. But as she is being trained by Hippolyta's sister on their cover, eventually the queen tells her sister, you're going to train her harder than everyone else, and she will become the best Amazonian, even better than you, who is Robin Wright's character. And during her training, you finally cut into the future where she is much older. She is essentially almost at her peak of her training. And she fights Robin Wright, still gets, pretty much defeated by her until her powers, or a portion of them, awaken. And that's right before eventually Chris Pine's character flies in on a fallen plane and happens to land on Themyscira.
In the ocean in Themyscira, okay? And then she goes to save him, of course, because she got to. She got to dive off the cliff and all these things. Splashes into water, swims over, saves him, like, super fucking easy. Like, weak old man, drags him to the shore.
I guess Zeus didn't really hide the island. It's just, like, somewhere far away. These humans won't find it. And then they invented ships. And then so if Zeus were around, he'd be like, oh, shit, they might reach this island one day. So that's the only thing that... Like, some people are saying, well, he didn't really hide it well, but back then, who knew if man was ever going to make that kind of advancement? And more importantly, we find out that these Amazonians were there to try to ease mankind into, essentially try to cancel out that hate that Ares put into man. But essentially, the greed of humans made it so that they took these Amazonians as slaves into their society, whether they were, work slaves or maybe it was a sexual thing. It's probably all of the above, with however they treated these Amazonians. Eventually, Hippolyta led a revolt against all of these and left, and that's when Zeus, separated him from the rest of mankind. So there is a war history with the Amazonians that does reflect that fight against humankind and man and everyone else. So they are, from the beginning, strong warriors.
And we do see that a lot of their background, and we get, a wonderful story about why they fight. And it's to help protect man, like you said, to help keep the peace between them. But it stems from a far greater war between all the gods. There's a lot of mythos about them, which we see in the comic books as well. So I was very pleased that they included that.
This was basically the New 52 version of Wonder Woman. A little bit of Gail Simone's as well, but this was her New 52 origin, in which they mention the clay creation, but like the comic book, they say, that's actually just a story. You are Zeus's daughter. So it is definitely like the rest of the comics, or I'm sorry, as the rest of the movies like Man of Steel, the New 52 version of these characters. So yes, with Ares and the God of War, in the comics you find out later that she becomes the new God of War, and a little bit more on that near the end of the story review. But Chris Pine's character has been
Steve Trevor. You act like we don't know who he is.
Steve Trevor's trying to get this book of poison gas, this recipe that Dr. Poison had, over to the intelligence of the war. Is it British intelligence?
British intelligence.
And to show them that there is a greater weapon in this time of supposed peace that the Germans are trying to build with the rest of the world.
And like we said, he crash lands, so Wonder Woman goes and saves him. As she's dragging him to shore, we see that there's a German fleet trying to find him, that his plane crashed. They were following it, and they stumble upon Themyscira, and of course they have to attack.
Yeah, and the Amazonians attack right back. The Germans are on the ground, and it's guns versus bows and arrows and
swords and
spears. So it is the first time they see guns like this, and sure, a ton of Amazons do end up dying. But since they are warriors, as soon as they get up in their face, it's over. You know, they're not skilled in hand-to-hand combat like these Amazons are. So they eventually overrun the Germans, but not before killing the best actor in the whole movie, and that is Robin Wright.
Robin Wright. She jumps in front of a bullet to save Diana, takes a bullet right to the, stomach or something, and in her final parting words, tells Diana, calls her God killer, and tells her she needs to go. And she says, where am I going? And she just says, go. And then she dies. And I've cried the last 2 times I've seen this scene because she just dies so well.
She does. And Gal Gadot reacts really well. Anytime any actor ever gives me the no, like Hugh Jackman did it in The Fountain. Gal Gadot does it here in Wonder Woman. That gets me extra much. Like it's way more powerful than like the silent sobbing. Like the no, the disbelief is always excellent. Like, I'm just like, perfect. That is, I am sad. Well done.
I am sad now.
And I'm also sad that it's the best actor in the movie is gone within the first 30 minutes. I'm like, God damn it. So yeah, of course they don't trust Steve. The Amazons are there, which they're all, we'll talk about the casting actually, but they're fucking giant women. They're strong. They're athletes.
They're great.
They flew in a bunch of athletes for this. And so it shows. It shows in their build and what they're doing, in their fighting. It is excellent. But they don't trust Steve Trevor because he's a man that came with them, and he's also dressed in the same German outfits. So with the Lasso of Truth, they find out that he is actually a spy, and that's where I told the story about the poison book and how he's trying to get that back. Diana understands the importance of this and agrees to leave with him back to the war, where she will kill Ares to end the hate in man's heart. So she believes that this is what's going to save mankind, and she believes it is the responsibility of the Amazons to take the God Killer straight to Ares and end him.
Naturally, her mom doesn't want her to leave. That's her little girl, is fighting her the whole time, saying, no, you need to stay. And Diana eventually sneaks away. We see a scene where she jumps up to the tower where all her gadgets are held. And we see her taking them and showing up to Steve Trevor and saying, all right, let's go. And right before they can get away, Mom shows up.
Yeah, she tells her, I cannot stop you, but mankind does not deserve you, and essentially lets her go. I mean, there's not much more to it. It is her letting her little girl essentially fulfill her destiny, not just grow up, but Wonder Woman knows that she is nothing on this island. She needs to be more and leave it and confront Ares.
That always gets me right in the heart, too. I tear up every time because her mom says, you were my greatest love, and today you are my greatest sorrow. And gives her a final parting gift, which was the tiara that Robin Wright wore up until her death, and gave it to her and said, this belonged to the greatest warrior on Themyscira. Make sure that you live up to that.
There's a lot of charm in this movie. There's a scene of them on the boat, and they're talking about, oh, I don't sleep with women, but I do sleep with women, and it's...
I've read all 12 books about lovemaking, and we don't need men. And I was like, whoa.
That was for all the feminists and all the women. Like, it's very carefully written so that Wonder Woman is received positively by modern audiences, and it shows in that scene. It's not just... Even when Steve Trevor was naked in that bath, if this were made in the 90s... Wonder Woman would be shying away just like Steve Trevor was, and like, oh, what is that? And, and instead she's just like, oh, that's kind of weird and different. And then she asks about the watch. Like that, shows the modern writing and how it's reflecting modern audiences. So it is handled very carefully in that scene of them. It is a charming scene still. She does very specifically say, we do need men for procreation, but not for pleasure. And he kind of whimpers like, no, you need us. And Steve is written really well in that he's written as man's ego. He says, I'm above average compared to these other guys. And it's hilarious. It's funny. It's true. It's what most guys would say anyway. Yeah. Like, it's a good scene, and it is smartly written.
Mm-hmm. I'm a spy. I have to have a lot of vigor.
Eventually they do make it back to London, and this is the first time she's interacting with the modern world, a whole different world for her. So she's seeing the ugliness because there's no greenery anywhere, but then she's also seeing a baby for the first time ever. Right. So she freaks out and she sees that. She's acting, of course, odd, but it's not done in like this
like a goofy way, right?
It is still charming, and it's
like you said, it's charming, it's very realistic to what happens, but you really get to see that she's a calculating person. She's not she understands that she needs to follow the customs that they're going through, that she's surrounded with, and she's just trying to figure it all out and asking the appropriate questions when they need to be asked. But like you said, nothing goofy, nothing silly of, oh, you can tell she's not from here.
And she also meets Steve's secretary. What was it again? Edith? Etta Candy, who's jolly and she's funny, and she's the comedic part of the comedic group of everything that happens in the movie. She's there to add some light to the story. And sure enough, they're there to get Wonder Woman dressed because she's dressed like a fucking warrior. She needs to match the rest of her world. And that's where we get eventually, just fast forwarding to the next scene, in which you do see her for the first time block bullets. And that is in the alleyway where these Germans are there to stop Steve Trevor and to try to get this book from him and to try to get it back to Dr. Poison. And one of the things that I would have, if it weren't for this one short scene, I would have had a bit of a problem with. And we know that Wonder Woman's powers are awakening. The more, the older she is, the more she trains, the more she believes in herself. And we saw that with the tower scene. And when she can jump further than any of her Amazon sisters, and she jumps onto that tower, and as soon as she panics and has fear, she knows that she's much stronger than she thinks, and that's when she can climb up the tower. There's a scene in the battlefield with the Germans on that beach back in Themyscira where she sees the bullet travel from the German gun over to an Amazon and kill her. And that to me was the one thing for the audience to say, this is also a part of her being superpowered, and that she can see things faster than, normal people or her Amazon sisters. So if that scene weren't there, her blocking bullets all of a sudden in the alleyway would have been like, since when can she do this? But because we saw that one scene, that she can see these bullets coming from a mile away. That she can move and block those, even though she can get shot, and she does heal quicker. She still can get shot, but she can block them with her armor. She can block them with her gauntlets. And all of that is plays out in this one scene where we see her for the first time, just a taste of that action when she's in man's world.
And even that scene, like you said, is very, very charming, very sweet between the two, because Steve Trevor is trying to protect her. He says, stay behind me. And of course she jumps in front and blocks that bullet, and then boom, 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 beats up all these guys.
Aside from that, they had a meeting with the council, and they said, we're not going to go and invade this particular section where they are making these gas bombs, because we are just about to get peace with the German army and the rest of the world. And that's when Steve and Wonder Woman has a disagreement, and Wonder Woman says, we need to go there anyway. I need to defeat Ares. And Chris Pine says, yes, I know we're going to do that. We are going to go do it anyway. We need backup. And that's when they go and get the Blackhawks, this goofy troop of can-do-nothings. Like, we almost didn't need them in the movie.
We needed them.
They almost did nothing to further rest. Like, I don't think I saw the chief kill anyone.
No, he didn't do anything.
I don't think I saw the actor kill anyone. They played distractions. They did that well. They did the undercover thing. But we later find out that they're not like the army that we had hoped. They're not the backup that we had hoped. But, we know that they're actors. And one of them, is a singer. And they're not really soldiers. And the guy isn't really a sniper. And he can't really snipe. So this is where we first meet them. Professor Lupin, who is one of the British intelligence guys from the Harry Potter movies, he's like, I'm going to help you guys, but off record. And that's when, we were first like, okay, why is this guy suddenly helping them? He's probably bad. And so it's a very simple story. Like, you can see these things coming from a mile away. You know who's going to be bad. You know who's going to be good. But regardless, the story continues to unfold, and they do eventually make it to what is probably the most important scene of the movie, and at least my favorite scene of the movie, this whole sequence, is the no man's land and the village scene.
So they make it to this trench, almost to the front line. They're in this trench, and you just hear things exploding and bullets shooting back and forth, and they say, we're still a day and a half away from where we can cross safely, so we need to keep moving. And Wonder Woman gets stopped by a woman who's saying, please help my village. It's been enslaved. They killed all these people, and please just help them out. And Steve Trevor points out, this is called no man's land. That means no man can cross it. They've been here for a year and a half, and nothing's happened.
Plus, it's not even their mission.
Right. It's not even their mission. We need to keep going. You can't save everybody in this war. And Wonder Woman has a great moment where she's like, but this is what I came here to do. And that's the first time that we see her in the full costume. She discards her British clothes and steps out into no man's land.
Such a fucking incredible scene. And I'm a guy, so me watching it going, that is fucking amazing. I could only imagine what women felt, what little girls felt when they see her cross no man's land, get shot at, discard all of these bullets, take on these mortars, and be the catalyst to them crossing no man's land, to them in a matter of minutes doing what this army couldn't do in over a year. And it is an incredibly well shot scene. The score is amazing,
beautiful.
And then and she is what causes this army to overtake this German army and then eventually save the village. This whole sequence is incredible. The shield use, they make it into the village. They kill the German soldiers in there. That little scene where she busts into that building, that house. I don't know what you want to call that, but it is, people are comparing it to the warehouse scene from Batman v Superman, where Batman takes out all those guys. They're comparing it to that scene in which they're like, if we can get that scene in every one of the DC movies, with whatever character,
right?
Like that's what it needs to
amazing.
be, and that's what it is for Wonder Woman. Like everyone talks about BVS, no matter how you felt, that Batman scene is like an Arkham game, or that is Batman right there taking out all these guys. This is Wonder Woman crossing no man's land and ridding this village of these German soldiers.
And she does, and she gets to see the day saved. She gets to see all the people excited and happy and have hope again because of her, and there's so much character development for her in this movie, but that's when I think she really begins to see, like, yes, this is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here to do. This is what I believe in. And we get a nice little slower segment afterwards where she has a great moment with Steve Trevor, and we get to see the guy who can't shoot from the Blackhawks singing for the first time in years, enjoying himself, and she gets to experience snow, and we just see joy throughout this whole village.
And then Steve and Wonder Woman hook up at night.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Do you think that scene was needed? Do you think it was fine? Do you think it was important? Did it mean anything to you? If they cut it, would it have changed anything?
I don't know that it really would have changed anything if they cut it. I'm happy it happened for them.
I felt it came out of nowhere because it was... Yeah. If it faded to black after them dancing in the snow, like it was such a nice, touching scene. It would have been enough. Like, and then you cut to the morning. But then they wanted... I guess it was like... It made it more romantic, but... People have pointed out, like, maybe they didn't sleep together. They just, I'm like, oh, the way that scene was constructed, they fucking made it so they slept together.
They slept together. I did see one thing that somebody pointed out is, I guess people are saying, well, that's Diana's first kiss. And then they showed some of the Amazonian women. They're like, that's not her first kiss. I was like, that is true. But if you want to really think about it and put it in these kind of terms, something like that probably isn't, and I don't want to say it's not significant because that is something something that's significant, but we saw earlier in the movie that the idea of sex is just kind of commonplace for her. It's not, woo, this big thing. So it's probably, again, commonplace. She probably just saw it as, look, we have an attraction to each other. Yeah, why not? I've read all 12 books about these things. Let's give this man a chance.
The next morning, they go after Ludendorff, in which they want to get into his palace or his stronghold, whatever you want to call it.
It's the German stronghold.
Exactly right. And they sneak in. There's like 3 different times that they just sneak in using poor disguises.
Yeah,
and
why not?
This is one of the times. It is very funny in which, he tells him, you lost the invitation, you fool. And it's a good scene. And they eventually go in. Diana's supposed to stay behind, but of course she can't help it. She needs to go in there to defeat Ares. And there's a scene in which Steve Trevor is essentially trying to find out more about Dr. Poison and her gas. But that's when he's distracted by Diana, who walks in a dress that she probably killed another lady for, or whatever she did to her. We don't know, but she comes into the stronghold. She confronts Ludendorff, and that's where the audience is meant to still believe that it is Ares, because he's talking about the Greek gods. She brings it up first, and then he says, "What do you know about the Greek gods?" And I don't know if you noticed, but the way that Patty framed the shot of him right before he leaves and says, "What do you know about Greek gods?" There's a pair of horns right behind, and
I didn't notice.
Hung up on the wall behind, and she framed it so that it looked like they were right. They were his horns, like right behind his head. It was perfect. So it's still like them trying to say, "Oh yeah, this is Ares," and she still believes it. And when she's about to go in there and kill him, Steve stops her and says, "What if you're wrong? What if this isn't Ares? Like, we will have still lost everything with the information about the gas, and we still don't know where everything is. We're here for information, not to blow up this fucking building." And because Steve stopped Wonder Woman from doing this, they fire off the first test of this gas, which is at the same village that they just fucking saved. So anyone that says this movie is not as dark as BVS or Man of Steel, this shit happens. Like, it is as dark as those other movies. There's a difference between tone and content. This has dark content. The tone is a little bit lighter, but it's still a fucking dark movie. And that's when she goes into the village with the same people she just saved. And we see those dead villagers right on the ground. And she's broken down and she's mad at Steve for stopping her from killing Ares, because she believes that this would have stopped all those people in that village from dying, which she just saved. All of the women, all of the babies, all of the men.
And that's when she begins to see that this isn't as black and white as she thought it was. It's not just Ares who's controlling the Germans to attack these people. Like, Steve and his men are corrupt too. That's
how she sees it, yes. That they're also, in their own way, evil. That they are a part of this world, and she is better off doing this by herself. And in spite of this, Steve still tells her, knowing that she's going to, she doesn't trust him. He says, "Ludendorff is on that smoke. I told the chief to follow him, and that's the signal right there. That is where Ludendorff is." So she listens to him and goes towards the smoke, and she breaks into this German war base. And this is where they actually have the gas bombs, and this is where they have the rest of the gas that Ludendorff plans on dropping on the very front line that will kill millions of soldiers, that will turn the tide for the Germans. This gas masks will do nothing against this type of weapon. And when she goes in there, she almost immediately finds Ludendorff right away in that one top, whatever you call it, the crow's nest. I don't know what it is.
The big old building.
The big old building at the watchtower. And she jumps in there and confronts Ludendorff, who, by the way, keeps taking these gas pills. We didn't even talk about that. It's a dumb thing of the movie. I did not like it. In which Dr. Poison developed these gas pills that will raise his strength and give him vigor and make him stronger and give him vitality. And he takes those. It's like a drug. It's like a steroid. And only then can he have this little battle with Wonder Woman for 5 minutes, in which he is as strong as her and stronger and has this little upper hand with her for a minute. I thought it was stupid. Like, it was like such a made for TV device that it's like, you could have cut that out. It would have been fine without it. You could have had he didn't have to overtake Wonder Woman. Like, I understand that you tried to make it believe that he was Ares, and that didn't at all, at least to me, play into it like, oh, is he feeding off of the Greek gods with this? Like, they would have explained it otherwise, which they didn't. So it was just it was just for this scene, which I think was unnecessary.
But she does have this great fight scene, kills him, of course, with things like, "Ares, I don't even remember what she said, but she kills him, and we see him die a dramatic death, and she looks up and sees that the war is still going on.
Yep, they're still loading the bombs.
Nobody stopped. They're supposed to stop, and nobody has. So Steve Trevor runs up, makes sure she's okay, and she's like, "I don't understand. This was all supposed to stop. I killed Ares. It should have stopped." And Steve pretty much says, in not so many words, says, "Ares doesn't exist. This is just people. And you need to come with me and fight this because it's what you believe in." And she breaks down and says, "My mother was right. Mankind doesn't deserve me." And he says, "No, we don't deserve any of this. But it's what you believe in, and it's what I believe in, so I'm gonna go."
And I was like, she should go with him. Like, that should have been enough. And she still, like, stands there frozen, which is one of the things that's like, okay, at this point, she should have been, like, this should have been enough for her to say yes. But instead, it's written differently, where now she's still there and the Watchtower, then Sir Patrick appears, and that's where it's made clear to the audience that he is actually Ares, that Lupin himself has been Ares this whole time, that he's been working for the British side to make sure that this war happens and to make sure that Steve and them actually stay away from that stronghold. But he has to show up, and he has to explain to Wonder Woman that you are actually the god killer after the sword is destroyed, and we're like, oh shit, how's she going to kill this guy? And he says, no, you're actually the weapon. You are what Zeus created with his last bit of his power with Queen Hippolyta to make sure that the gods that I do end up dying. But I'm here as the god of truth, not just the god of war, to tell you that man is evil, to show you that men are evil, women are evil, mankind, this creation of Zeus, are simply pure evil. And together we can actually bring this earth back to what it was and what it should have been. And, you know, that's where we have a very similar scene to Man of Steel, in which Zod shows him with a potential future of this world, except on Wonder Woman's side, it is this greenery without mankind. And it's almost like, well, you know, as vulnerable as she is, yeah, she should almost believe Ares, but instead she says, no, that's not. I forget exactly how she ends up fighting him, but she just says that's not what I believe in, and that's not how I was brought up.
And we finally get to see the fight scene between Ares and Wonder Woman. They're blowing shit up, and meanwhile we have the Blackhawks running around trying to figure out how to stop this warplane that's going to drop all this gas on Britain and just obliterate it.
Steve comes to the realization that the way that the gas is built, it's going to be very flammable. So he says, well, we can't blow it up here. So I'm going to have to we know that he's going to take it up into the air and he's going to blow up with it. That's just what's going to happen. And that's what ends up happening. Without Wonder Woman, that's the way that these guys can stop this tragedy from occurring. And that's how they can stop the greatest weapon from the Germans. And there is a moment in which, of course, Ares, and I thought it was awesome when I was first watching this. I'm like, we better not just see Sir Patrick in his fucking English suit fighting Wonder Woman with all his powers. He eventually turns into fucking Ares. He puts on the goddamn armor from his own Ares. Like, it looks almost straight from the comic book. Straight from the New 52 comics. It looks like Ares in form on the big screen, muscly. We know he's not that muscly like the actor himself, but you fucking see him huge. It's like, yes, fucking Ares is right there. Wonder Woman is right here. They're gonna fucking fight. After one of the moments in which she's thrown off because she's still not fully awakened with her powers. She's gone deaf for a moment. And that's when Steve Trevor's trying to explain to her that I need to go do this. And it isn't until later that you find out what he says, and we'll get to that. But he gives her the watch, and he runs off after the plane. And she doesn't understand what he's doing yet at that moment. But we do. And he jumps into the plane, beats up the German soldier, and keeps flying the plane upward and far away from everyone else. And this is when she tries to keep fighting Ares, but she is instead wrapped up in this metal casing because he can control all this metal around him, the steel work. And it is actually a reference to the early bondage days of Wonder Woman. So it's like they even have that in this movie. So she's like in this little bondage thing also. And that's when she's looking up at the plane and she sees, oh, Steve Trevor is in there. And she says, Steve. And then it blows up. And I think even then, she doesn't realize that this is all on purpose.
You're gonna make me cry again. This part of the movie gets me every time because we see Steve in a plane. We see him and he's going up. And he knows what he has to do, and you can see, like, he's upset about it, because it's that moment of, I'm gonna die. And it just holds on his face. We don't see flashbacks or cutscenes or anything. It just holds on his face of him coming to terms with, this is my death, this is how it ends for me. And at the end, he smiles. And you know that he's thinking about oh my god, I'm crying already. But he's thinking about all the people he's going to save. And he's thinking about this amazing woman that he met that changed his life in a way that nobody ever had. And he knows that it's all worth it. And he just turns around and fires the gun and it explodes. Oh my god, Steve Trevor. And of course Diana sees this and freaks out, and she just screams his name and bursts out of her
A man
bondage.
Awakens her powers. Man saves her.
Will you stop? Someone that she loves saves her. Thank you.
It's true though,
because her aunt awakens some of her powers.
But he awakens the rest of her powers.
Okay, the love that she had for him.
She awakens her own power. She gets upset. Her rage is what essentially her rage and her sadness and her hurt is what pretty much has her at 100%. And she beats the shit out of all these German soldiers in godlike fashion. And this is when Ares realizes, like, yes, this is your potential. This is who you are. You are a god. And he's like, see this ugliness around you? This is all mankind. This, the foolish and ignorant Steve Trevor, this Dr. Poison right here is the perfect example of what mankind is. Destroy her. And she's considering it. Like, you see Diana upset and angry and hurt. And she lifts this fucking giant tank about to crush Dr. Poison. And that's when it flashes back to her realization of, it's not that Steve Trevor was shot down by the Germans. It's not that Steve Trevor, that this was a bombed airplane. It's that he did this on purpose. This was his sacrifice. And it was an act of good. And it's that act of good, Steve Trevor's, that makes her realize that there is good in man. And this is the difference between her and Ares. And this is when she realizes what Zeus and the rest of the gods realized, and that there is good in mankind. They're not just corrupt and evil as Ares sees them.
And we finally get to hear what Steve Trevor says, which is she's telling him, whatever it is, I can go, I can stop it. Because he said, I have to go, I have to go. Whatever it is, I can go and I can stop it. And he looks at her and he says, I'm going to cry again. Oh my God, Steve Trevor, I can't. He says, I can save today, you can save the world. And then he hands her the watch and says, I love you, and runs away.
Yep.
And that's, of course, when she realizes this was his sacrifice to save all these people because of his love for me, because of his love for just people in general, the world.
Yeah.
And that's when she looks at Ares and says, like, no, this is out of love. You can't look at them with hate. Yes, there's hatred in their heart, essentially, but this is out of love, and it's what I believe in.
And that that love is what saves the world. And that is 100% Wonder Woman. Like, it's in the movie.
Right.
And that is Wonder Woman. The essence and the core of the character is captured perfectly in that moment. And that's when you know this is Wonder Woman written on the big screen right now as I'm watching this. This is it right here. And if I were Wonder Woman, I'd been like, no, there's good in mankind. And then he says lies. It's like, look, Ares, if all the gods, including me, came to this realization, you might want to consider maybe you're wrong, dude.
And that's why it's Wonder Woman and not you, a man, trying to fix it with logic.
I would have reasoned with him, and he would have been like, you know what, maybe you're right. And then there would have been two gods around.
But then we don't get to see this awesome fight scene between the two of them, where her powers fully awaken, and she finally destroys Ares.
She's summoning Zeus's powers as daughter of Zeus. It's incredible. Like, he throws the lightning bolts at him, which he's also a son of Zeus, so it makes sense. And she encapsulates the thunderbolts and shoots it right back at him, and punches a hole right through his chest with that same power and says, goodbye, brother, and kills him.
Punches a hole through his chest where Zeus had already injured him in the previous. Correct. Yes. So, yes, finally destroys him. There's a huge explosion. And once all the dust settles, we see the sun begin to rise.
People arguing, and I've seen this online, that if he can take on Zeus and the rest of the gods, how was he not able to kill Wonder Woman? But he's not even able to make it back to Olympus. Like, he is a weakened god because of Zeus. And yes, the daughter of Zeus is able to finish the job, and she ends up doing it. And this is what stops, I guess, essentially the war. There was some truth to what she said. Like, the one main threat was this weapon. Once you got rid of this weapon, the Germans had nothing, because it was only Ludendorff, whatever his name was. And that was it. And he was already dead. So the war was going to end regardless, but Ares was there to kill Wonder Woman and to, I guess he would have, I don't know what he would have done if he actually killed Wonder Woman. He would have just influenced the war again, and there would have been another war.
He would have rallied the troops.
There would have been another war eventually. So, and this is where there was truth to it, because the German soldiers and the rest of the characters around them kind of come to this awakening of sorts of like, oh, the war is over. So, you got to take this as like, this is a fictional world. Theoretically, maybe there was no World War II, and the existence of Ares makes it so that these German people and all these people were a little bit more aggressive with him around than with his influence. So they cut to a little bit further down, where the rest of the English people are celebrating, and then she sees this photo of all the falling soldiers and heroes, and she sees Chris Pine on there, Steve Trevor, and she, wells up tears and touches his picture. And then you cut to the present where she's still looking at this picture, and this is where the movie started. And it's her emailing Bruce Wayne back and saying, thank you for bringing him back to me. And it's like, why this picture is so important now, and why she was looking for this picture in Batman v Superman. And we now know the story behind all of these characters, and why love and humans are so important to her. And that's where the movie ends. I'm not even going to talk about the connection to BVS further than that, because some of the things don't make sense. But this, as a movie, as a standalone movie, is everything. You don't have to have seen BVS.
Right.
You don't have to see Justice League. Like, this is like the best of the superhero movies. You only need to see this without further understanding, and you get everything, and it tells a good story.
Yes to all of that. One thing I was pointing out to people, too, is so we have a lot of background because of the comic books. We read New 52. We have a lot of background about Wonder Woman. You don't even need that. You can just go and see this and, this is the Wonder Woman story. Boom. And then you could fall in love with the character.
Aside from the couple of little things there, like the Blackhawks, I didn't really care about them, honestly, and that's a fault of the story. Well, I did not care if they lived or died. I did not care about the chief.
I think the point of the Blackhawks being there is to really give Diana understanding, because in the very beginning, she's very naive about the world. She's grown up on Paradise Island, and that's all that she knows. And we get to see, like she calls them in the beginning, they're all misfits. They're bandits and liars and all this kind of stuff. People who should not be good. And they help her see the good in them. At one point, Samir, I don't know. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, I think it was Samir. They call him Sammy.
Sammy. She's talking about what's with this guy. We brought him to shoot and he can't even shoot. And he points out everybody's going through, a war, their own personal war, just like you are. And I think that helps her see more depth in these people too, of they still have so much going on, but they're still putting that, this first. It makes them very human to her.
What do you think about Ares? Some people are saying that it's a weaker villain overall, that he was kind of a one-note character. I do agree with that. I didn't feel sympathetic for Ares. No. It wasn't their best villain in the DC universe. I did like him because he is played by Professor Lupin, and I'm like, yes, fucking Professor Lupin's a badass.
There were two things that I liked about Ares. The first is, one, I didn't really expect him to be there. When she kills Ludendorff and Chris Pine pretty much says this is how people are, I thought the movie was going to continue that way. And we never saw Ares, and, it is. No nods is what it is. Oh, she was mistaken. This was just a fairy tale that her mom made up. So I did appreciate that they included him, because that further symbolizes or further explains where Wonder Woman got all her powers from. Yes, she came from Zeus. The second thing I liked about Ares is he points out to her, I'm not making people do this. I go and whisper. I go and give them ideas. They do this all on their own. You even see that, and going back to see it the second time, it made more sense, or it struck home more, because we see him in one of the very first scenes when they're all arguing in a room, and he's trying to get a word in, and nobody's listening to him.
Right.
And what he's saying is just little whispers. That's all that you can hear from him, essentially. I mean, over the crowd of all the people, all you can hear is the whispers. And Diana walks in, and he thanks her later. He says, thank you for making the room quiet so they could actually hear me. So it kind of further solidifies the fact of, he's not really doing this. He's just going and giving them ideas, and they're doing it all on their own. So I did appreciate him for that as well.
I think I would have liked him way more if we knew why he didn't like mankind, why he saw evil in them. Because from the beginning, they weren't like this, and it wasn't until he influenced them and made them jealous, as they said in the tale, then I would have been like, okay, there's a reason, like maybe I can sort of see his point. But
we don't necessarily know that, though, because he says in the final fight, he says, I just tried to get all the gods to see that there was evil, the evil that I saw. I'm the god of truth. I was just trying to get the other gods to see that they were already like this, and nobody would believe me.
It's possible. I don't know. Maybe the story was a little bit skewed, in which, they said that Ares influenced them, and maybe he didn't. And this is just how, I don't know. It's because it's confusing and we don't know that. I think it is a fault of the story.
Yes, but if you look at Greek mythology, Zeus was an asshole anyway. So Zeus probably showed up on Themyscira and he's like, listen, my son did all this bullshit. Here, let me fuck you and leave this little kid. And I'm gonna go die now. Peace.
It's possible. We don't know that because it wasn't told to us. And again, the story.
This is true. This is
but,
true.
You know,
I'm sorry.
These are just faults of it. It's not a huge thing. It wasn't enough to make me... I do think Ares should have been a slightly better written character, a slightly better written villain. It's still not as weak as, you know, what we see in the MCU, or even, I'm trying to go, I do like Zod too. I'd say he's on par with Zod. How about that? I can settle for that. Right. He's about on par with Zod in Man of Steel. So, and then the fact that I didn't care about the Blackhawks as much, little things like that made it so that the story wasn't 100%. But overall, it did its job. It focused on Wonder Woman. We saw her growth. We saw her change. And we saw it through her mental and physical actions with the final act of the story.
So let's move into talking about our next segment, which is the acting. We had Gal Gadot. First time she's had a whole movie.
She's done the Fast and the Furious movies, but I think it is her first lead. I believe it is.
I have heard people say they didn't think she was the best. I thought she did a great job. She was Wonder Woman for me.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments where you can tell she's acting, and that's never a good thing. And she doesn't come off as strong as I would have liked. Mm-hmm. She does in those moments where it's no man's land and she's kicking ass, like it matters and she's doing it well. But everything around she's not quite what we see in the comics or in even the older television show or in the Justice League cartoons. So I don't think she still is the best pick at all for Wonder Woman. I think we will see a better Wonder Woman in the future, maybe 50 years from now.
Well, we may also see her develop and grow, much like we'll see Wonder Woman. I think the main thing maybe you're seeing is she's lacking confidence, the confidence that we're used to seeing from Wonder Woman. It's
possible, yeah. I mean, it could be a number of things, and you're right. Maybe she will be a better Wonder Woman in Justice League, but overall, it was enough for audiences to love her. Like, they really liked her portrayal of Wonder Woman. It's enough. It's good. So overall, it was a good pick for them. I don't think it's the best pick, but it worked out for the movie and for audiences.
We also had Chris Pine, who's used to being a lead, and not so much in this movie.
Yeah, not as much. I'm sure he brought in audiences, people that are fans of his. He did that thing where he stutters like 17 times in the movie, which I didn't like and I didn't enjoy. But, he was still a very charming counterpart to Gal Gadot. And I did care about him. I did care about their relationship. So their chemistry definitely worked on screen.
We have Ares, like we said, not the strongest character. But, of course, Professor Lupin.
Next strongest actor behind Robin Wright. Fuck yes. Loved it 100%.
Robin Wright, when she was on the screen, just stole the screen. It was all hers.
It's a tragedy that her character had to get killed off. It sucks.
But then we got to see that great dying moment. It's the best dying moment I've ever seen.
I like the Fountain's dying moments, but yeah, okay.
But she was great.
Yeah, she was good. She was very, very good. And we've got the Blackhawks. They did their job too. Very simple roles. They were funny. There was nothing terrible about them. And Dr. Poison as well. There wasn't much to her either, and that's another thing with the story. She was just a scientist that developed this. Ludendorff was goofy. I didn't like his portrayal either, and that's another thing with the story too, with his fucking gas things. And there's the biggest issues are more with the story than with the actors. So, I mean, it's just one of the other things. I think the actors overall did fine. I think Gal Gadot, again, was probably my biggest issue as far as everyone else, but it wasn't enough to bring down the movie. It wasn't enough to even bring her character down at all. She still did put up a performance that everyone overall enjoyed and that I overall enjoyed too.
Next, we have the directing.
The scenes that we're talking about earlier, No Man's Land, the village scenes, perfect. Like, this is why
Beautiful.
Patty Jenkins is who she is. This is why she gets the projects that she does. And yes, she fucking nailed it with that scene in which Chris Pine is about to die. She nailed it with No Man's Land, the close-ups of Wonder Woman as she's fighting these German soldiers. I mean, there are some very beautiful scenes in Themyscira as well. Gorgeous battle scenes. And then you see the choreography when the Amazons are training and fighting. And she did an incredible job. So full credit to Patty Jenkins. And it's too bad the other characters are probably kicking themselves, in the ass because maybe they could have done a better job. Maybe they couldn't, but she fucking nailed it. And she did it really well. And for that, she should do not only the next Wonder Woman movie, but give her another DC movie. And let's see what she does with another character as well.
I definitely agree. Those moments that we were talking about were just so profound that I can't tell you how many times I was brought to tears in this movie. Like, not sobbing like when Steve Trevor died, but there were moments, no man's land. And I've heard from a lot of people, oh, I cried during this scene, because it's amazing. And I'm typically not a fan of when they do like a real slow-mo of something happened.
Sure.
But I feel for this movie, it worked really well. One of the moments I think is one of my favorite moments is when Robin Wright, and we see it in the trailer too, is jumping with those 3 arrows to shoot those guys. I don't know why. I just love that moment, because I'm like, yes, here's fucking strength right here. She just got her head bashed in by Wonder Woman. She was bleeding everywhere. And then she's like, no, I got to go fight these people.
Rides in with a fucking army.
Yeah. And she's just kicking ass and doing all this stuff, and not at all worried or intimidated by these men with guns that she has just seen kill people. She's like, no, I'm going to jump over your fucking heads and shoot all 3 of you in the heart. Did you see it hit all of them in the heart?
Yep.
All 3 of those. And
the greatest warrior.
Just moments like those fight scenes in particular, were just shot really, really well. And
you had very, very good camera work as well. When you see Diana riding with a horse from one end to the other, they do the, I know there's a term for it. I don't know it.
The
I've seen it all
upside down
the time.
camera thing.
Well, not only is it upside down, but it's sideways. Like she does it twice. And the other scene is when you see her riding, and then you follows her from the right side of the screen downward, and then to the left side of the screen, and it inverts, not just upside down, but sideways. So there's a lot of clever camera work as well in the movie. It's very creative. It holds long enough that you need to. Like, I prefer, like you mentioned, the scene with Steve Trevor holding on him, and when you have an actor strong enough to portray the different emotions that he did, or the emotions that Robin Wright did during her dying scene, that's when it's super effective, and that's when you have to know when to cut, when to hold, and credit as well to the editing team for the film. So yes, you couldn't have found, I don't know, it's I wouldn't, if I'd seen this first and not seen anyone else's version, I would have been like, just keep Patty Jenkins. Like, this is fine. This is good. It is excellent. So yeah, Patty did an incredible job. The special effects finally rounding out the review of Wonder Woman before our overall thoughts.
For me, I mean, there were a lot of, cool moments again. I feel like they used CGI more than they needed to.
Yes, correct.
Because we see in the beginning all of these great stunt works, all of this great stunt stuff with the horses and the Amazonians riding them. And then when we get to the battle with the Germans, there's more CGI than there needed to be with those same stunts.
I agree. And you see that maybe there's a little too much slow motion used in some portions of it. Even at the beginning with the Amazonians riding on the horses and into the army, like, you can tell during their training, it's like, yeah, this part's green screen, this part is CGI. And when it's a little too glaring, I have an issue with it. And again, this seems to be a theme with all of the movies we've seen, all of these summer blockbusters, where it's just not quite there yet. Where with this technology or with the use of it, I don't know which one it is, but where it's still a little bit glaring. And unfortunately, this is another victim to it. And the CGI with Ares, with the destruction, with Wonder Woman and her powers when she's taking out these German soldiers, looked incredible.
Yeah.
Like, that was done extremely well. And I don't know if because there's more weight to the actual use of it, and it's not like as floaty as the characters, like, jumping on one side of the horse, or like, when it's
swinging men on a spear.
Exactly right. Like, all of that is way more glaring than, like, two gods going at it and flying and landing heavily and taking. That's where it lends itself much better to that kind. It's not as, it doesn't work when it's supposed to be graceful, and that's where you should have people on strings or all of that. So I know it's a budget thing, and I know it's an insurance thing. You can't actually have these actresses or actors on the horses and doing these things, but they did it well. That we know what was going on. The other thing too, this lasso of truth, when it was in action, it looked terrible to me. I don't know about you, but when she's like whipping it around and she's dragging these, and she's like, there's that scene when they're in the village where it looked the worst, because it looked like it was drawn. Like, it was like so weird looking.
It looked like a spaghetti noodle.
It did. Yeah. And it was not good.
I was looking at it and I was like, couldn't they just use a green lasso and then just highlight it?
but they needed it to go woo woo woo. It had to have movement to it.
It was supposed to lend to the fantasy, but yes, it did not look very good.
It looked better in Batman v Superman, and I know it wasn't as flary, like she wasn't like curling in the air like in BVS, but it was like good enough where it's like the fucking lasso of truth. They didn't have to get too fancy with it, and I think that was the issue. They tried to do a little too much with it. It worked great with Ludendorff, where you have that far off shot because it's just a curve, and she brings him down, and you see the glow of the. I know it's an off screen light that they're using, but it looks great when they have it just holding or she's grabbing someone with it. It looks amazing. It looks fantastic. But when she has to like actually use it in action in quicker scenes, it doesn't work too well. So that's something else that I hope improves with Justice League or improves with Wonder Woman 2. And I'm sure the budget isn't as big in Wonder Woman as Justice League or in BVS. Right. So yeah, we'll probably see an improvement in the other movies, but in this case, it did look, I don't know, it just looked like a weird hand-drawn 80s.
Spaghetti noodle.
Yeah, spaghetti noodle.
So are you ready to give it its final score?
I am. Do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
And remember, as a reminder to anyone first tuning in, we don't rate it as, or at least I don't rate it as like how I overall enjoyed it. So I enjoyed it 5, it's in with 5 being City Lights and 0 being The Avengers.
The Room.
I liked, fine. The Room is pretty bad too. I would put The Room and The Avengers right next to each other.
The same category. Ooh. What if Tommy Wiseau was in the Avengers? Would Avengers be ranked higher?
Avengers would only be helped with Tommy Wiseau. It would be helped with Tommy Wiseau directing the Avengers. Anyone other than Joe Whedon would improve the Avengers.
I want Wiseau to play the Hulk. You're making me angry, huh?
I smash.
You're tearing me apart, Loki.
All right, so my final rating for Wonder Woman, I'm going to give it 3.5 lassos of truth.
Ooh, I give it 4 lassos of truth.
People are comparing it to Captain America, the First Avenger.
Yeah.
I see some similarities, I guess, in that it's a war, and I guess there's a plane at the end that explodes, but they're very different movies, so I don't understand when people make that comparison. But if I were to relinquish, and if I were to concede and say, okay, you can compare it to the best movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that is totally okay. Like, it's a good thing that they are comparing it to the best from the MCU. Overall, Wonder Woman is we're going to buy it on Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. It is worth seeing twice in theaters. We saw it twice. This is going to be a movie that, because of the success, we're going to see more characters like this. Because of this, I'm sure Captain Marvel now has a budget bump, and now they're taking that more seriously as they produce it. This is an important milestone for filmmaking, not just women and little girls. It is an important, diverse move for the future of superheroes and for films in general.
Something that I keep telling people about this movie, because I don't, of course, want to spoil this. But something that I really, really appreciate is never once in this movie does she say, well, I'm not a man, or, well, I'm a woman. Her sex, her gender is never a factor of any of this. And something that I like to point out to people when, they say, well, what did you really like about it? And I say, you can take her character and replace it with a man, and it could be the same movie. Mm-hmm. It's not because she's a woman she can do all these things. It's because she is strong, because she believes in this, because she wants to do this. And that's really what it all boils down to is, you don't have to be anything special per se. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a special woman to be able to do these. You just have to be yourself and have the willpower to get through it.
Even in the way they handled the posters and the marketing mm-hmm. itself, they took it so seriously. And I told you earlier that the way that you can tell if a female character has been shot right or has been drawn correctly and it's not goofy or too feminine is if I can recreate that same pose. If I look goofy doing it as a guy, then that's not the pose mm-hmm. you want to go with. And, I at work, we do these cover recreations where we find like this female character, she has her foot up and she's putting out her chest, and then we recreate it as guys like, ooh, and people find it funny because yes, it is a funny pose. Mm-hmm. It's not because it's just like a guy doing that pose, because that pose in general is silly. And I looked at the Wonder Woman posters. Out of the 4 that I saw, only one I would have looked silly doing. The rest of them, it's like, no, anyone could, right? A man or a woman could do that same pose and look awesome. And there was just the one that it's like 1 out of fucking 4. That's great. Mm-hmm. It's the marketing is awesome. The marketing is strong. And The film itself as well is something incredibly... It is incredible for a lot of people out there, for the DCEU. As much as they want to say this is the course correction for the DC movies moving forward, as I always point out, the last 3 also made a shit ton of money. Yes, this is a better critically received movie. If this had been a bad movie but still made money, I still would have been on the same boat of, we're 4 for 4 still.
Yeah.
We're still 4 for 4. They all made fucking money.
It's not the Avengers was so.
It's true. And go see it. Go see Wonder Woman if you're on the fence on it. Obviously we spoiled everything, but go see it again. Yes. How about that? You saw Wonder Woman once, go watch it again.
Go on the emotional roller coaster that we went on. Because I'll tell you, I cried more the second time than I did the first time.
It moved me emotionally, too. I actually did tear up during the second viewing. And
No Man's Land. Yes.
No Man's Land. No Man's Land fucking got me.
Steve Trevor.
It's No Man's Land. It's such a great scene. It's right there with, the Batman warehouse scene. I think it's more important because while I cried as a fanboy watching Batman take down those guys, this meant more. Like, there was more weight to
what she was
everything.
Doing
like, just the action itself meant so much on so many different levels, and the movie does as well. So, good on Wonder Woman, good on the filmmakers, good on Zack Snyder, who worked on the story.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to give him credit for that, but he did work on it. His fucking name is on there, and he makes a cameo in it. So, good on him, too, as much as they don't want that.
And good on Gal Gadot doing reshoots 5 months pregnant. Okay, can we
That's
throw that
true,
out there?
yes.
Because I could not do any of that right now.
You say that. Maybe you could have.
Listen, I don't like to get out of bed.
One of my friends texted me and said, you see what happens when you make something with Zack Snyder actually, he worked on the story. Here you go. Boom!
You're so funny.
So, good on everyone. Good on the DC Universe. And good on all the people that enjoyed it. Whether you want to say that, it's the first good DC movie, or you want to say that's the fourth from the DCEU that I've enjoyed. It is a success story all around.
So that does wrap up the podcast for us this week. We talked a lot about Wonder Woman, just like we knew we would, but we hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you want to talk to us some more about it, you're welcome to hit us up on Twitter at ReasonsI'mBroke, at Kelli. But we encourage you guys, please don't spoil this for your friends. Be careful when talking about it in public, like I always say. A lot of people on my Facebook still haven't seen it. They're having trouble actually getting into showings because they're all sold out. So if you have the opportunity, wait a few more weeks before... and ask people, have you seen this, before you start talking about it.
So thank you so much for tuning in for the review and for the rest of the podcast. And if you're a new listener, hopefully you give us another shot next week. Hopefully you subscribe to the show. Otherwise, thank you for listening to this episode. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Kelli.
We'll see you next week.